Hello there, my name is Chris Chaplio and I've been asked to talk to you today about CHOG, a little bit about CHOG. You may have heard of us. We're pretty well known in the Christchurch and surrounding area. And CHOG obviously stands for, as you'll see here, Christchurch Harbour Ornithological Group. It's got a website, chog.org.uk. We've been around about 60 years now, since the mid-1950s, when there was a first ornithological survey of Christchurch Harbour. But we've grown into something very different from that. I mean, that's still important, understanding and recording the wildlife of Christchurch Harbour, but we are now about conservation generally. We have grown hugely as an organisation. We've got about 500 members. We just reached that landmark about a week and a half ago. Over 500 members, which obviously gives us a really good voice in conservation and trying to work with partners to protect and help and support Christchurch Harbour, that's Stanpit, Hengistbury, Sandspit, the surrounding area, and as far up as the Avon Valley. So, a little bit about that. I've lived around here, I lived close by for a number of years. There's a few people on committee who are very interested in committee, naturalists and people interested in wildlife. And I'm going to talk to you a bit about a couple of things today, about CHOG and what we do, a little bit about the local wildlife, and maybe how you could get involved, why you might be interested. And I'm going to finish up with a couple of little books here that might interest you as well. So I talked to you about, we record all the wildlife. Every year if you do join CHOG, as well as walks and talks which we run, which I'll talk to you about later, we also produce a really nicely produced little book, which is the Birds of Christchurch Harbour. That's last year's and that's the years before, 2018. Has colour photographs and lists all of the stuff we have in there, or all of the records of wildlife and birds within Christchurch Harbour during that year, as well as some interesting general articles. And membership of CHOG is £7 a year, which is a pretty good sum, and you're entitled to go on talks and walks as well. Family membership is family membership is £13, joint membership is £10, and if you're a student, it's just £5. So enough about me kind of doing my mini sales pitch there, but a bit about CHOG. Well, we get involved in conservation, things like planning applications. We're asked to sort of get involved in, give our thoughts from a conservation point of view, so things spring to mind such as recent offshore wind farm proposed developments, planning and Roseshot Hill, things like this, housing development. We work with Christchurch Harbour and Marine Society. We also we're involved in many things like active scientific conservation projects. So recently you may have seen there's been some invasive red weed which has been in hot spells growing hugely in Christchurch Harbour. It's caused a problem because a lot of small wading birds can't feed, as well as it gets a bit smelly and it's a bit unpleasant. So we've been working with people like Natural England and other scientific and government bodies to look at what that is, why it happens, and what we can do about it. To tell you a little bit about CHOG then, in terms of what you might be interested in if you want to join us or talk to us a little bit more. You don't have to be an expert, we're a very informal organisation. The particular things we do, we run a programme of indoor meetings, and obviously at the moment those are suspended because of COVID, but we're still running virtual ones. We're running them on Zoom, they seem really popular, and as soon as we can we'll get back to those. Generally we run them at St Nicholas's Church Hall on the Broadway down at Hengistbury Head on a Wednesday night. Throughout winter months we do run about 6 or 7. Really well attended, very friendly, you get a cup of tea, and we have talks from local experts, people who've travelled abroad all over the world, but also things with a really good local flavour about raptors in the New Forest, or particular conservation projects, or we have people from the RSPB talking about new reserves and how they're managing those. So all sorts of things, and they really have been, we've been very impressed with how successful they've been. And we also run outdoor meetings where you can go along and attend a walk. We run those obviously at Stanpit, at Hengistbury a few times a year. But as well as that, we go further afield. We go out into the New Forest in the spring. We go as far as Portland Bill, Poole Harbour, and we have a full programme of those on our website available for members and for non-members if you wish to sort of pay a small donation as well. And as I really stress, you don't have to be an expert. the people who are there are knowledgeable and there to help you. They're all volunteers, people like myself who go along and will help you, and so you can know as much or as little as you like, and it's just a sort of friendly, informal way to get out. So a little bit about the wildlife that's around at the moment, really. Well, I always think Christchurch Harbour is a little bit of it's like an airport for wildlife, really, for birds in particular. An airport hub, if you see what I mean, because things are always coming and going. It's not geographically a huge area, it's very busy, there's a lot of pressure on it from other usage, water usage, recreational usage, and understandably so, everybody wants to get out there and enjoy it. But despite all that, we get a lot of wildlife. We get wading birds and ducks that stop in on their way through. At the moment, as I'm talking to you, it's September, it's autumn migration. We've got a lot of wildlife. Birds like swallows, chiff-chaffs moving through, other types of warblers, and they're all on their way back south generally, and they will soon give way to different birds. Finches move in the autumn, and then in the winter we tend to get an established population of ducks, geese and wading birds that spend the winter with us because it's warmer than where they come from, places like Iceland or the Arctic where they breed. Then in the spring you'll get birds coming through again on their way north, arriving sort of April time. It's good for passage then. We've got some really interesting breeding birds. I don't know if you can see this here, but we've got things like, oh sorry, I'm not doing a very good job there. We've got Dartford Warbler there, and which is a bit of a local speciality. Wheatear and avocet, which both pass through, but Dartford Warblers actually nest with us. We've got stone chats, and aside from that, I talked about the general wildlife. Recently we've had a little local celebrity, a bull grey seal, who you may have seen, it was in the Echo actually. Big animal who spent about a week, 10 days hauling himself onto the beach at Hengistbury, created a great deal of public interest, and he would spend a few hours there resting and off he went again. I don't think he's been seen for a week or so now, but we'll occasionally get cetaceans, that's whales, and dolphins particularly off the head. There's lizards, there's butterflies, there's a good variety of wildlife for a small area. So, yeah, there's lots of wildlife around. It's a good time of year to get out there and have a look. What more can I say, really? We would like you to see more of you at CHOG, and if you want to find out more, check out our website. I've also been asked to recommend a couple of books, and I'm going to do that now. So, this is the first one. This is, when I was a kid, we had a kind of field guide. I think my dad had it originally. We had field guides, and they were fine, but they were pretty basic. They've come a long way. This is a fantastic book. The Collins, and I'm not on commission, I should add. This is the Collins Bird Guide. There's been several editions of this, but the pictures, it covers every species in Britain and Europe, and the pictures are phenomenal quality. So, and the descriptions as well. And if that's daunting, and there's a lot of species in it, don't worry, there are plenty of kind of ones that cover slightly fewer species, but this is a great book. So that's published by Collins. I don't think there's too much more I can say to you about that. If you like photographs, this is a good book, only published a little over a year ago by Wild Guides with the RSPB. It's called Britain's Birds, an identification guide to the birds of Britain and Ireland by Hume, Still, Swash, Harrop and Tippling. And this has got some fantastic photographs of all the birds, including rare birds that turn up here and more common birds, with great little descriptions and maps. And it's, yeah, that's a great book as well. If you want something that's more like a reference book, it's been around a few years now, written by a guy called George Green and published by Helm, The Birds of Dorset, which is a reference book that lists up until the sort of early 2000s, all the birds that occurred, and there's changing status. Some birds have become much more common, things like kites and little egrets particularly, which were almost unheard of sort of 25, 30 years ago. But other species sadly have declined and under a lot of pressure. But The Birds of Dorset by George Green is a great reference book. And, you know, I mentioned it before, it's not a reference book, but The Birds of Christchurch Harbour, if you do join CHOG, you get a copy of that, or it's available at a few outlets. That's got information in. So I think I was asked to talk for 10 minutes, and that's pretty much exactly what I've done. Thank you very much for listening to me. We'd like to see you out there. If you're interested in wildlife, get some books and have a look. And thank you very much. And goodbye.